The prison ship Martyrs monument in Fort Greene Park, in the New York City borough of Brooklyn, is a memorial to the more than 11,500 American prisoners of war who died in captivity aboard 16 British prison ships during the American Revolutionary War. The remains of a small fraction of those who died on the ships are interred in a crypt beneath its base. The ships included the HMS Jersey, the Scorpion, the Hope, the Falmouth, the Stromboli, Hunter, and others. Their remains were first gathered and interred in 1808. In 1867, landscape architects Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux, designers of Central Park and Prospect Park, were engaged to prepare a new design for Washington Park as well as a new crypt for the remains of the prison ship Martyrs. In 1873, after urban growth hemmed in that site near the Brooklyn Navy Yard, the remains were moved and reinterred in a crypt beneath a small monument. Funds were raised for a larger monument, which was designed by noted architect Stanford White. Constructed of granite, its single Doric column 149 feet in height sits over the crypt at the top of a 100-foot wide 33-step staircase. At the top of the column is an 8-ton bronze brazier, a funeral urn, by sculptor Adolph Weinman. President-elect William Howard Taft delivered the principal address when the monument was dedicated in 1908. Context: remains of deceased prisoners during the Revolutionary War. The British maintained a series of prison ships in the New York harbor and jails on the shore for captured prisoners of war. Due to brutal conditions, more Americans died in British jails and prison ships in New York harbor than in all the battles of the American Revolutionary War. The British quickly disposed of the bodies of the dead from the jails and ships by quick interment or throwing the bodies overboard. Following the end of the American Revolutionary War in 1783, the remains of those who died on the 16 prison ships were neglected, left to lie along the Brooklyn shore on Wallabout Bay, a rural area little visited by New Yorkers. On January 21, 1877, the New York Times reported that the dead came from all parts of the nation and every state of the Union was represented among them. Officials of the local Dutch Reformed Church met with resistance from the property owner when they sought to remove the bones to their churchyard. Nathaniel Scudder Prime reported that the skulls and feet, arms and legs, were sticking out of the crumbling bank in the wildest disorder. Edwin G. Burroughs described the skulls on the coast as thick as pumpkins in an autumn cornfield. During construction at the naval yards, workers were not sure what to do with the bones, and they were started to fill casks and boxes. They were reburied on the grounds of the nearby John Jackson estate. Eventually, near 20 hogsheads full of bones were collected by the indefatigable industry of John Jackson Esq., the Committee of Tammany Society, and other citizens, to be interred in the vault. The monument's dedication plaque estimates that 11,500 prisoners of war died in the prison ships, but others estimate the number to be as high as 18,000 people. Political resolve: the movement to commemorate the dead only took off when political differences between Federalists and Democratic Republicans deepened in the last years of the 18th century, and the latter took up the question of a memorial in response to the Federalist direction of a statue of George Washington in 1803. The Tammany Society, headed by Benjamin Romaine, was created and grew into a Republican organization. On February 10, 1803, Republican Congressman Samuel L. Mitchell asked the federal government to erect a monument to the fallen, but had no success. They then turned their efforts to a grand ceremonial reinterment of the prisoners' remains, emphasizing less the construction of a monument than something more suited to the common man. Tammany formed the Wallabout Committee in January 1808. Their efforts took strength from renewed anti-British feelings stemming from British incidents in 1806 and 1807. Finally, when President Thomas Jefferson enacted the Embargo Act of 1808, Tammany and the Republicans used their plans for a reinterment as part of their campaign to bolster anti-British sentiment. Precursor vaults and monuments. first vault and monument on April 13, 1808, there was a ceremony to lay the cornerstone of a planned vault. A grand ceremony of reinterment followed on May 26, 1808. A small square building stood above the 1808 vault with an eagle mounted at the point of the roof. It was located on a triangular plot of land near the Brooklyn Navy Yard waterfront in what is now called Vinegar Hill. A wooden fence with 13 posts and bars painted with the names of the original 13 states was erected in front. At the entrance through the fence, an inscription said, "Portal to the tomb of 11,500 Patriot prisoners, who died in dungeons and prison ships, in and about the city of New York." During the Revolution, the remains were put in long coffins made of bluestone. Extra space was provided in case more bones were discovered during continuing renovations in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Little was done to repair or upkeep the vault, and eventually, the original monument was in a state of disrepair and neglect. In 1839, Benjamin Romaine purchased the land where the martyrs were buried, in a tax sale from Henry Reed Stiles for $291.08. Later that year, on the 4th of July 1839, Benjamin Romaine made an appeal for support to build a monument. In this appeal, Romaine talked about the monument and his intention to use his Revolutionary War pension for the monument. On the 31st of January 1844, Benjamin Romaine died and was also interred in the crypt as he had been a prisoner of war on the ship's second vault and monument later in the 19th century. The idea of erecting of a monument on a vault site attracted only occasional interest until 1873, when an appropriation of $6,500 was established for a new mausoleum. The new 25 by 11-foot brick mausoleum in Fort Greene Park, then known as Washington Park, was constructed. The new mausoleum was constructed of Portland granite embellished with pillars and fretwork of polished Aberdeen stone. The front of the tomb had the following inscription: "Sacred to the memory of our sailors, soldiers and citizens who suffered and died on board British prison ships in the WALLABOUT during the American Revolution." On June 18, 1873, the first tomb was emptied of bones and they were moved to this tomb. The bones remained here until interest was again built and a new monument could be constructed.